Okay, let's explore what it's like to navigate being with people when they're really disconnected from their heart, really trapped in that aspect of the divine essence that I call the wanter. Because when we're really captured in our wanter, we can be quite wild, to say the least. Buck wild, we could even say. And sometimes we will be encountering people when they're in that very buck wild, very primal part of the divine essence that I call the wanter. And how might we navigate moments like that? Those can be quite tricky, can get quite intense. Okay, here we go. So about 11 years ago, I would say, yeah, that's probably about right, about 11 years ago, a woman that I had been sitting with for 2 years at that point, she had been dating someone, a retired airline captain. And I had been hearing about him in the explorations that I was having with her. And then one day during a lunch break, my phone rings, and it's a number I didn't recognize, but I got the knowing that I should go ahead and answer it. And I did, and it was him, the boyfriend, the retired airline captain. He was, I think at the time, 68 or 70, somewhere in that range. And this, as I say, this was about 11 years ago. And it's him, it's the boyfriend, the retired airline captain, calling me. And I said, "Oh, hi, so nice to speak with you." And he said, "I would like to schedule with you." I said, "Oh, okay. I don't know if she happened to mention it to you, but I always invite people to allow 3 hours, at least for our explorations." And here's what I hear on the phone. 3 fucking hours? You got to be kidding me. So there's a lot of information there. He's clearly, not choosing this on his own. Because the next thing we hear on the phone is, after he says that, then I hear this on the phone. "Oh, okay, sure, right. Yeah, that would be okay. Let's go ahead and schedule that." So, you could imagine that she's in the room and she's giving him the look. And he's now like complying and saying that he's willing to go along with it, even though you could tell he doesn't want to. There's a lot of information in this initial phone call. So I say, "Oh, okay." So we find the date and the time and we schedule it. And when the day arrived for him to be here at the studio, as I say, this was about 11 years ago, I happened to be right up front as he was walking up the sidewalk, and I could see him walking toward the front door, and I was right there as he was walking in. So I stood right there and, greeted him and said hello. And he reached out his hand for a handshake. Pretty like aggressively sort of, he put out his hand for a handshake. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, here we go." So I go in for the handshake, and as he grabs my hand, he is squeezing as hard as he can. You could tell he's trying to crush my bones, in my hands, break my bones. So that's a tricky moment. That's a very aggressive wanter. That's a real primal wanter energy. Very aggressive. Trying to assert dominance and crush my hand. Well, in that moment, there's a choice that I make. For years and years, this has been a way that has just unfolded naturally for me from all my years of the ashram, and 7 years at the ashram, 4 more years with 11 more teachers, and learning all these really wonderful natural ways of really dropping into the heart and letting that be where we navigate from. So I had been at that for so long. Right in that moment, I just dropped instantaneously. All that I am, all my attention just drops into the very, deepest heart essence within my being, the hridayam, we would say in Sanskrit, the heart of being, in the heart chakra. I just drop in there and I become aware of all the divine friends and my divine self. And that source essence is always what we are in the very heart of being. So I drop in there into the heart of being. And what I then sort of inwardly say is, please let me be love. Please let me be love. In those moments, I'm aligning with love. I'm, please let my, whatever action happens now come from love. So that happened instantaneously as he's trying to crush my hand with all his strength. Well, what then all of a sudden I could feel my arm is now very strongly activated, the muscles in my arm, and I'm now squeezing his hand back very firmly. It turns out that was love. That's what love looked like. That's how the love that I am was expressed in that moment. It was a very firm squeeze back. And to his surprise, I have a very strong grip. When you spend your whole life growing up as a baseball player, gripping a baseball bat your whole life, you develop a very strong grip. So to his surprise, I have a very strong grip. So that's what the love looked like. Please let me be love. And it was a very firm squeeze back. It was just a little brief, really firm squeeze back. And in that moment, if I could give words to what was the essence of that energy as I was squeezing his hand back, was sort of like this. Come on now, we can do better than this. As the really firm squeeze was happening, to his hand. Another way to say it might be, I love you too much to let you hurt me. That would be another way to say it. Yeah, I love you too much to let this happen. We're not going to do this to each other. We can do better than this. All of that was sort of the energy of that really firm, loving squeeze. And he backed off his grip and had kind of like a surprised look on his face. And then he let go. Now, remember, moment to moment through this whole flow, I'm going to be continuing to just drop back into the heart of being. Please let me be love. Aligning with all that divinity that we are, the very heart essence, the revealed heart within us. There comes a point where the heart that we are is so revealed, we can navigate these tricky moments from there. Please let me be love. Please let me be love. So then I'm dropping back into the heart after the firm squeeze. Come on now, we can do better than this. We're not going to hurt each other. Come on now. And in many ways, that firm squeeze is actually an invitation for him to join me in this loving kindness. So the next thing that then happens, I say to him, what's it like for you to be here today? He took that as if I was somehow attacking him or something, because here's what he said in reply to that. He said, "What are you talking about? I don't do anything I don't want to do." Oh, okay. So I dropped back into the heart. Now, see, I'm not taking this personally at all, because I know who he really is. I'm resting in the heart with him. He is what I am. He is this love. He is this eternity. He is this divinity. Now, he's not in touch with it. He's just disconnected with it. And he's really in his wanter. And his wanter is being very aggressive. So we're getting a feel for how his wanter is oriented. His wanter is oriented very aggressively. So that was his response. What are you talking about? I don't do anything I don't want to do. Drop back into the heart. Please let me be love. And then this came out of me. Oh, okay. But really, what is it like for you to be here today? And he said, something wrong with your ears? I just told you I don't do anything I don't want to do. Oh, okay. So I drop back into the heart again. Please let me be love. Well, okay. What would it be like for you in this moment just to be really honest with me? What are you talking about? Drop back into the heart. What would it be like for you right now just to let me have it? Really? He says. I said, yeah, absolutely. And then you could just see the wanter just get real aggressive and rise up, and he got in a real sort of aggressive stance, pointed his finger right in my face, and said, "I think you're full of shit." Oh, it was so good. A whole belly laugh just came out of me because he was finally honest. I didn't mean to belly laugh. It just happened. It was so wonderfully lovely. And I just belly laughed with joy when he said that. Now he got this really surprised look on his face when that happened. He said, "That didn't bother you?" I said, "No, not at all." I said, "Thank you so much for being so honest with me." He said, "What?" I said, "I just want to thank you so much for being so honest with me." I said, "What's been going on?" Oh my God, Mitch. For 2 years, all I've been hearing, every time I do something she doesn't like, is Mitch says this and Mitch says that. And how come you don't do it like Mitch says to do it? And you need to talk to Mitch. Mitch this and Mitch that. For 2 years, that's all I've been hearing. The only reason I'm even here is because she gave me an ultimatum. She told me if I didn't come to see you, she was going to break up with me. And the compassion that I just looked at him. I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." And he softened into that a bit. He said, "Well, it's not your fault." I said, "Oh, well, that's so kind of you to say." I said, "You know what? You don't have to be here today. You can turn around and head on out. You don't have to be here at all." And he softened even more. "Well, this is a pretty cool place you got here. What else you got in this place?" Oh, so there was a giggle that came out. I said, "Oh, okay, well, would you like me to show you around?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, first I'm going to invite you to take off your shoes." "You want me to do what?" "You know, it just keeps my place nice and clean. Would you be willing to do me that favor and remove your shoes?" He said, "Oh, okay, I could see that." So he sat down on the little bench that I have right there at the entryway, and he undid his lace shoes. And then we had a little tour. I'm not going to stop and show him certain things that would just confuse him and make him, wonder, who is this guy? Like my puja to my guru in India. I'm not going to show him any of that stuff. That would just confuse him and, wouldn't be useful to him at all. So we kind of had an abbreviated tour. We sat down in the chairs. I served him some tea. And I'm just loving him. I'm just honoring him. I'm just letting him be right where he's at on the journey. I don't have any agenda. I don't need to fix him. I don't need to change him. I don't need to solve him. I don't need to analyze him. I don't need to extract anything from him. I don't need anything because I know who he really is. I'm resting in that with him. I'm resting in his true nature, which is also my true nature. It is all of our true nature, our divine essence. I'm just resting there with him. And he starts telling me about how he had recently retired from, many, many years of being an airline pilot, and that he was a captain. And he started telling me all about all of that. Well, that was very fun for me because when I first went to college, that's what I did. I flew airplanes. I was on a trajectory where I, was possibly going to be a pilot. I did my private license and my commercial and my instrument rating, and I became a flight instructor. So I was kind of on that trajectory. So I'm just really enjoying him telling me all about flying and his career and all of those things. So I'm not in any way doing anything other than just being with him and honoring him and allowing him to be heard and seen and honored as he is, with no agenda whatsoever. No agenda whatsoever. Just companioning him as he shares with me his journey. And then he can tell by some of my responses to his sharing of his career as an airline pilot that I know a bit about aviation. And so then he says to me, "You seem to know a bit about aviation. Do you have any connection to that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, nothing like what you've done with your career. But I did, when I first went to college, I did fly airplanes, and I did. At one point, I thought I was going to be on my way to being an airline pilot." He said, "Well, where did you go to school?" And I knew that he would know Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So you don't have to say the whole thing, because everybody in that world, anybody in aeronautical science, whether it's aviation or space, everybody knows about Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It's, one of the best ones in the country, probably the world, for that area, that field. So I said, oh, well, I went to Embry-Riddle. And he looked at me and he said, you went to Embry-Riddle. So his wander's coming out, very skeptical. And I said, yeah, I went to Embry-Riddle. He said, oh, well, tell me about Embry-Riddle. Like he could tell he's wanting something specific that only somebody that actually went there would know. So I told him a few things, and then like something that, only people that went there would know is the airplanes have the N number with an ER on the end of it. Every airplane has what's called its N number, its identification number. So it's the letter N and then several numbers and then some letter designators. And in the aviation world, you don't say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's a whole, pilot alphabet, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Echo, Delta. There's a whole, so every airplane at Embry-Riddle has its number and then ER, which would be Echo Romeo. So I shared all that with him, and he's like, oh, so you really did go to Embry-Riddle? And I said, yeah, I did. I'll only tell you the truth. I won't make things up. I'll just only share with you from my direct experience. He said, well, what did you do after Embry-Riddle? I said, well, I worked on the space shuttle program at the Kennedy Space Center. You worked at the Kennedy Space Center on the space shuttle program? I said, yeah, I did. So he, needed some details about that. So I told him about, some things that only people that work there would maybe know, like how you have to get into the bunny suits because of the, the clean rooms, and when you're inside this orbiter, you have to wear the bunny suit because, any of the stuff that might be on your body that would come loose, like your eyelashes or your whatever. There's a whole process that you go through an air shower, and you put on the bunny suit, and then you go through the air shower. I told him the whole, flow of that. And I talked about the Hubble Space Telescope that I worked on, and, some details that only somebody that worked on that would know, and the Galileo probe and things like that he found very interesting. He was very interested in that. So now we've just been exploring those kind of things together for 2.5 hours. We've been exploring together, and he didn't even want to be here at all. So then suddenly I could feel a shift happen for him, and his hand went to his chest, and you could feel that he was having a heart opening. His heart was opening. He got real tender, and his hand went to his chest. And he said, Mitch, this is really weird. I'm having a swirling energy in my chest. I said, oh, would it be okay if you just close your eyes and just let yourself be available to this? And he turned his head kind of sideways, and he said, I guess that would be okay. And I said, oh, well, thank you. So he closed his eyes. And as soon as he did, he had kind of like a, intense, you could tell he was going through something very intense, and some tears started to come, and he wiped his tears really quickly so that I wouldn't see them, and you could see there was intense energies going on in his body, and a few more tears came, and he wiped them as quick as possible. And so now I'm just like being with him. I'm just honoring, I'm just, resting in the loving acceptance with him. And a very intense flow happened, and he just started sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. That kind of sob where you're just completely just captured in it. Where he's just heaving and sobbing and in a whole really intense flow. So I'm just being with him. I'm just companioning him. I'm just resting in his true nature with him, loving him, honoring him, accepting him, being with him. And it lasted for a long time. And I'm just honoring him as he is, just allowing him to be as he is. And it probably 30, 45 minutes, it flowed like that. It would sometimes be kind of like be less intense, and he'd blow his nose, and it would happen again and again, like that, in waves and waves and waves. As I say, 35, 45 minutes, maybe longer of this flow, very intense, but it got less and less, and it was just releasing and releasing as I was just being with him and honoring him and allowing him to be as he is, because I know who he really is. He is what I am what you are, what we all are. He is a divine being having this temporary human experience. He is divine essence, experiencing this vibration, which is also the divine essence, this intense energy that he's also experiencing. Whatever frequency or intensity of energy it is, it's all the divine essence, always expressing itself as various frequencies in temporary waves. It eventually moved its way all the way through, had just kind of flowed its way all the way through. And he opened his eyes and he blew his nose again and looked at me and he said, wow. And I said, yeah, wow, that was amazing to experience that with you. He said, Mitch, you're just so easy to talk to. And I said, oh, that's so kind of you to say. He said, I feel like I could tell you anything. And he was all, enthusiastic and inspired and joyful. And I said, oh, well, thank you for that. Is there something you're wanting to share? And he looked at me and you could tell he was just feeling so much love, so much gratitude. And he looked to his left and right to make sure nobody was about to overhear what he was about to say, which, where would they have come from? We're inside the studio. But anyway, that's what he did. Made sure nobody else was going to overhear because it was obviously a very tender thing to be willing to share. And he kind of leaned forward in his chair and kind of in a whisper voice. And you could tell he was actually feeling so much gratitude and love for me. That's what you could feel. He was so grateful for what had just happened. And he looked at me with such love and he said, Mitch? And I said, yeah. He said, for the first time in my life, I've experienced what real love is. And as soon as he said it, you could see, as soon as the words came out of his mouth, he realized that love that he was feeling toward me was also the love that he is. You could feel that he realized it as soon as he said it out loud. So when he said it, Mitch, for the first time in my life, I've experienced what real love is. And then he gets that look of insight, that moment of clarity. And he says, and you know what I just realized? And I said, what? He said, it's also within me. And I started sobbing when he said it. It was so tender and so beautiful. Oh my goodness. So I start sobbing. He starts sobbing. We're two grown men sitting together in the heart of being, sobbing with gratitude for the potential of this liberation of this love that we are. It was so wonderful, so simple, so natural, so lovely. And then he takes a big breath and he says, Mitch, I think that's enough for today. And I said, okay, sure, absolutely. And then he paused for a moment and he looked at me with just such playfulness and he said, you got any openings next week? So he and I have been exploring ever since. And we find out as the next explorations unfolded that he had a very intense childhood, very domineering, abusive father. And nothing was ever good enough. And he wasn't ever allowed to cry. And when he got an A- instead of an A+, he got yelled at and screamed at and you're an idiot and what are you doing? And you need to work harder. And, it was never enough. And so a rough go. And so then the way his wanter oriented itself to survive that was to get aggressive, to fight against, to overtake, to dominate, to take charge. He learned it from his father. And so that's the way that he arrived with me that day. He arrived, in that identified as that very aggressive wanter who had for 2 years been hearing about this frickin' guy, Mitch, thrown in his face every time he did something that her wanter didn't like. She would say that to him. So he wanted to come here. His wanter wanted to come here and then be able to go back and tell her, this guy's full of shit. Don't ever bring his name up to me ever again. So in that moment when he squeezed my hand and I just dropped into the heart of being, please let me be love, the way the love looked in that moment was a very firm squeeze back. Come on now, we can do better than this. We're not going to hurt each other. And moment to moment, as I just kept aligning with love, the way the love looked in each moment was unique. So that's a possibility when we're with people in very tricky situations, is to drop into the heart of being and align with that love that we are. Please let me be loved. Please let me be loved. And then whatever action or response comes from there, we let that be our compass, moment to moment to moment. As the years have gone on, he's often said to me that he didn't know what to do with me that day. When he said, that first day I got here, I didn't know what to do with you, because no matter how much I tried to provoke you and get you to, fight me, it was like punching at air. There was nobody there to hit. And I had never experienced what real love is. You were able to be loving and kind to me even when I was just being terribly mean to you. And he, often offers his gratitude and his apologies. And I always tell him, you don't need to apologize. That's okay. And now he's at the point where there'll be really tender moments where he'll say, Mitch, and I'll say yes. And he'll say, I love you so much. And I say to him, I love you as well. Isn't it wonderful that the love that we are can be liberated? We can let the love we are be lived into the world. This is the lovely possibility. And so in every moment, in any tricky situation that you find yourself in, through the momentum of your practices, the name that thought practice, the first growl practice, the living practice, the loving blessing practice, and chanting, you will be able to become ever more stabilized in your true nature. And moment to moment to moment, you can let the choice be love. When we let the choice be love, we're free. And we can let that be our compass when navigating this very tricky land of the wanter, in which everyone is a divine being who mostly forgets that, mostly is not connected to that. And so mostly they might do wanter type behaviors to us. If we can rest in the heart of being, we won't take it personally, and we'll be able to interact with them from this love that we are, which will look unique in every moment. Sometimes it might be a firm squeeze of the hand that's pure love. Come on now. I love you too much to let you hurt me here. Sometimes it might be, what's it like for you to be here? Sort of inviting, letting him know that it's okay to let that part of him that's annoyed to be here come out to play. Even that point where what came out of me was, what would it be like for you in this moment just to let me have it? And that's when he said, I think you're full of shit. When you're really resting in true nature, you wouldn't take any of that personally, and you'll be able to navigate it from this eternal, absolute, unharmable love that you are, and that you've always been, and that you will always be. And what we discover is, when we let the choice be love, we're home. We're free. It's who we really are.